Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Designs by Key, and today I'll be showing you how to crochet the Endless Summer Tank. The Endless Summer Tank is made up of double crochet stitches coupled with chain spaces to create a beautiful, light and airy mesh design that is sure to keep you cool this summer. And if you're a written pattern person, don't worry, I got you. Check the description for a link to the free written pattern. And don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notifications, and like this video. Let's go ahead and get started. For the materials, you're going to need some DBKey weight cotton or cotton blend yarn. I'm using Cotlin from WeCrochet, and if you haven't tried it yet, you definitely should. I'll leave a link in my description in case you want to give it a go. You'll need a G 4.0 millimeter hook, some stitch markers, a pair of scissors, a measuring tape, a needle to seam and weave in the ends, and it's also recommended that you have materials for blocking like blocking boards and pins. Alright, so we're going to start off with the slip knot and go ahead and place that on your hook. And row 1 calls for a foundation double crochet. So just to review, you're going to chain up 3. That chain 3 does count as a stitch. Yarn over, working into the 3rd chain from the hook. You're going to insert, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 1. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops, and you've created a double crochet. And at this point you should have 2 stitches. And just to show you how to continue, you're going to yarn over and find that chain that you created on the last step, going underneath both of those loops, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 to create a chain, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And at this point you just want to continue with your foundation double crochet. If you need a little bit more help with that, I do have a video about foundation crochet stitches that I'll put in the description box. From here you just want to continue with your foundation double crochet row until you get to the stitch count for your size, and I'll put that on the screen here. I'm going to go ahead and finish up my row and I'll meet you back. Alright, working on my last stitch of row 1. I'm making a swatch, so mine is a bit smaller, but this is what your first row should look like. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to row 2. Alright, so row 2 is going to be one of our first mesh rows. You want to go ahead and chain up 4 and turn your work. Now that chain 4 counts as a double crochet plus a chain 1, so you just want to keep that in mind. So you're going to skip the next stitch and work a double crochet into that next stitch there. Okay, chain 1. You're going to skip the next stitch and work a double crochet in the next. And you want to continue this pattern all along the row. You just want to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and work a double crochet in the next. And you're going to repeat this all the way until the last 2 stitches of the row. Alright, so at the last 2 stitches, we're just going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and you're going to double crochet in that very last stitch. Alright, so this is what it should look like at the end of row 2. And let's go ahead and move on to the next row. Okay, so for row 3, we're going to start by chaining up 4. Remember that does count as a double crochet plus a chain 1. Turn our work. And we're going to skip the first chain 1 space and work a double crochet into the next stitch. Alright, chain 1, skip the chain 1 space and work a double crochet. Okay, chain 1, skip the chain 1 space and work a double crochet. And you're going to continue with this pattern all along the row. Alright, so this is what it should look like at the end of row 3. All right, and let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so for row 4, you're going to chain up 4, turn your work, and this is going to be a row 3 repeat. So you're going to skip the chain 1 space and work a double crochet into that next stitch. Chain 1. Skip the chain 1 space and work a double crochet. And you're going to continue that all along the row. For rows 5 and 6, it's also going to be a row 3 repeat. I'm going to finish up to row 6, and I'll meet you back for row 7. All right, so for row 7, you're going to go ahead and chain up 2 and turn your work. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch, so we're going to work a double crochet into this very first stitch here. Okay, we're going to work a double crochet into the chain space and a double crochet into this next stitch. And we're going to continue with double crochet all along the row. Make sure you put a double crochet into every stitch in every space. And once you get to the very end, you're going to put a double crochet into that last space. And then you're going to work a double crochet into the third chain of the turning chain. All right, and this is what you should have at the end of row 7. All right, so for row 8, you're going to chain up 2, and remember that does not count as a stitch. Turn your work, and we're going to place a double crochet into the very first stitch. And then we're just going to double crochet across the row. All right, working on my last stitch. And this is what you should have at the end of row 8. And let's go ahead and move on. All right, so for row 9, it's going to be a row 2 repeat. So we're going to chain up 4, turn our work, and remember that counts as a double crochet plus a chain 1. So we're going to skip the next stitch and work a double crochet in the next. Chain 1, skip the next stitch and work a double crochet in the next. Chain 1, and you want to continue that all along the row. Okay, at the very last stitch, you're going to skip the next stitch and work a double crochet into that very last stitch. And this is row 9. All right, so for row 10, you're going to chain up 4 and turn your work. And this is going to be a row 3 repeat. So it's just going to be a regular mesh row. So remember to skip that first chain 1 space and work a double crochet in the next stitch. And this is going to be the same for rows 11 through 13. So I'm going to finish up to row 13, and I'll meet you back to start row 14. All right, so we made it to row 14. Row 14 is a row 7 repeat. So we're going to chain up 2, turn our work, and we're going to double crochet across. So work a double crochet into that very first stitch and double crochet into the next chain space. Stitch, space, stitch, space. You know what to do. Go ahead and double crochet across. All right, so I'm at the end of row 14. Of course, put a stitch in that last space and put a double crochet in the third chain of the turning chain. All right, so this is after row 14. So for row 15, it's going to be another row 2 repeat. So go ahead and chain up 4, turn your work, and it's going to be another mesh row. So skip the next stitch and work a double crochet into the next. Chain 1, skip, and work a double crochet. And go ahead and continue that pattern all along the row. All right, and this is what you should have after row 15. All right, so for the next few rows, rows 16 through 19, they are going to be just a row 3 repeat, which is just a normal mesh row. I'm going to finish up to row 19, and I'll meet you back for row 20. All right, so after row 19, this is what you should have. Of course, a lot bigger than mine, but it should have the same stitch pattern. All right, for the next rows, 20 through 32, we're gonna do a row repeat of rows 7 through 19. So you're basically gonna do all of these rows over again. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up through row 19, and I'll meet you back for the next steps. All right, so for row 33, we're gonna chain up 1 and turn our work. And we're gonna start our decreases on this row. So that chain 1 is not a stitch. So we're gonna skip the very first stitch, and we're going to double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches. So that's over this chain 1 space, this double crochet, and this chain 1 space. We're going to double crochet 3 of those together. So yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, go into that very last stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all loops on the hook. And that's a double crochet 3 together. And now we're just going to double crochet across the row. So we're going to double crochet into this next stitch here. We're going to double crochet into the next chain space. And we're going to continue doing that along the row until we have 4 stitches left. Okay, so I'm at my last 4 stitches, and we're just going to double crochet 3 together over the chain 1 space, the next stitch, and this chain 1 space. So just go ahead and double crochet those 3 together. Okay, and we're going to leave this very last stitch unworked. And that's going to reduce the row by 2 stitches on this end. At this point, you should start noticing the decreases on both ends of the row. All right, so for row 34, you're going to chain up 1, turn your work. You're going to skip the first stitch and double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches. All right, and you're going to double crochet across until there's 4 stitches left. All right, and once you get to the last 4, we're going to double crochet 3 together. And we're going to leave the last stitch unworked just like we did on the previous row. And for the next row, it's going to be a normal row 2 repeat, which is just a mesh row. We're going to chain up 4, turn our work. We're going to skip the next stitch and double crochet in the next. And you want to continue with that pattern all along the row. All right, so just for reference, at this point, you should really start to notice the decrease on both sides. So if it's not decreasing, you may want to go back and make sure that your stitch counts are correct. Right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so for row 36, we're gonna chain up 2 and turn our work. And we're going to double crochet into this very first stitch here. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this chain 1 space, skip this stitch, and skip this next chain 1 space. We're going to work a double crochet into the next stitch. So we're going to skip here, here, and here. So this is working a decrease for you as well. Okay, so chain 1, skip the next chain 1 space and work into the next stitch. Chain 1, and we're going to continue with this pattern along the row until you get to the last 4 stitches. Remember, in this case, the chain 1 space does count as a stitch. Okay, so I'm at my last 4 stitches. You're going to do a chain 1. You're going to skip the next chain 1 space, the next stitch, and the next chain 1 space. And you're just going to double crochet in the 3rd chain of the turning chain. Of course, yours is going to be a lot larger than mine, but you should still notice the decreasing on both sides. All right, and for row 37, it's going to be the same as row 36. You're going to chain up 2 and turn your work. You're going to work a double crochet into this very first stitch. You're going to skip this chain 1 space, the double crochet, and this next chain 1 space. And we're going to work a double crochet in the next stitch. And don't forget to do your chain 1. All right, chain 1. And you're going to continue with this pattern all along the row until you get to your last 4 stitches. And of course, I'm going to get there fairly quickly because of my swatch. So at the last 4, we're going to skip this chain 1 space, skip the next stitch, skip the chain 1 space, and just work a double crochet into that turning chain. All right, and you're going to continue with this row repeat all the way to row 39. All right, so once you finish row 39, this is what your panel should look like. And now we can go ahead and move on to the next section. So for row 40, you're going to chain up 1 and turn your work. You're going to skip the very first stitch, and we're going to double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches. All right, so next we're going to double crochet across into the next 31 stitches. Now I'm making a size 2X, so your stitch count may be a little different. I'll go ahead and put the stitch counts on the screen here. All right, so I finished my 31 stitches, and I'm just going to double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches. All right, so row 41 is going to be a row 2 repeat. So you're going to chain up 4 and make sure your work is turned. We're going to skip the first stitch and we're going to double crochet right into the next stitch. Go ahead and chain 1, skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next stitch. And you want to go ahead and repeat that all along this row. Okay, so row 42 is a row 36 repeat. So you're going to chain up 2 and work a double crochet into that very first stitch. Skip the chain 1 space, a double crochet, and the next chain 1 space, and work a double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip the next chain 1 space, and work a double crochet into the next stitch. And you're going to repeat that all along the row until we get down to the very last 4 stitches. All right, down to my last 4 stitches. We're going to skip the chain 1 space, the next stitch, and the last chain 1 space unworked, and just put a double crochet into that turning chain. And at this point, you should notice that it should start to decrease on both ends. So we're forming the V-neck portion of the top. For row 43, it is also going to be a row 36 repeat. So we're going to repeat the same row that we just did. Go ahead and chain up 2 and turn your work. You want to double crochet into that very first stitch and chain 1. You're going to skip the chain 1 space, the double crochet, and the next chain 1 space, and work a double crochet into that next stitch. Chain 1, skip the next space, work a double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, and you're going to repeat that pattern all the way across the row until the last 4 stitches. And once you get down to the last 4 stitches, you want to work a chain 1. You're going to skip a chain 1 space, a double crochet, and that next chain 1 space, and work a double crochet in the last stitch. This is going to be the same up to row 45. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my rows, and I'll meet you back to go ahead and start row 46. All right, so I finished up row 45, and as always, there should be 5 rows of mesh here just to stay consistent with the pattern. And let's go ahead and start row 46. All right, so for row 46, you want to make sure your work is turned and chain 1. You're going to skip the very first stitch, and then you're going to double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. So it's going to be that first chain 1 space and the next double crochet. Next, you want to double crochet across to the last 3 stitches. And once you're down to the last 3 stitches, you're going to double crochet 3 together. All right, so for row 47, you're going to chain up 2, turn your work, and we're just going to double crochet across. And remember that chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So for row 48, you're going to chain 1 and skip the first stitch, and you're just going to double crochet across to the last 2 stitches. Once you get to the last 2 stitches, you're just going to double crochet 2 together. So for row 49, we're going to do the exact same thing as row 48. Chain 1, skip that first stitch, and double crochet across to the last 2 stitches. Once you get to the last 2 stitches, go ahead and double crochet 2 together. Alright, so for row 50, you're going to chain 2 and turn your work. You just want to double crochet across. Alright, so for row 51, make sure your work is turned and chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch and double crochet across to the very last 2 stitches. And then you're just going to double crochet those last 2 together. So for row 52, you're going to chain up 2 and turn your work. and it's going to be a normal double crochet row. So you just want to double crochet across. And we're going to repeat this row up to row 57. So you just want to chain 2 and double crochet across. I'm going to go ahead and finish up and I'll meet you back. Once you finish your last row, this is what your strap should look like. And now we can move on to the other side of the V-neck. So you're just going to take your yarn and attach it to the very first stitch on the opposite end of row 39. And you can attach it however you see fit. And you want to chain up 1. And from here, you just want to repeat rows 40 through 57 to complete the other side of your V-neck. So this is a recommended step of the pattern once you complete both panels. I have both panels pinned down together and I'm going to actually steam block them. I don't recommend wet blocking for this particular yarn because it can easily stretch out of shape, but you can use whatever method of blocking you prefer. Also, make sure you do this step before assembly to get the best results. Alright, now that both panels are done, it's time to go ahead and start the assembly. So the very first thing you want to do is to line up the panels with the right sides facing together. And we're going to start seaming across the shoulder sections first. You want to go ahead and complete that for both sides. Alright, so once you finish with the shoulder sections, now it's time to go ahead and seam the sides. You want to start at the very bottom of your panel and you want to work your way all the way up into the first row of the decrease section. So the best thing to do is to go ahead and place a stitch marker here so you can keep everything lined up, but you want to go from the bottom all the way up until that decrease. And we're going to leave this open for the armhole. Right, so once you finish with assembly, now it's time to move on to the neckline. You're going to attach your yarn to the shoulder seam here, and we're just going to work our way around the neckline. So you're going to start here and work your way all the way down, back up around, and then back down and around the back panel here. And then you're going to work a slip stitch into that very first stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and complete my neckline and then fasten off. Alright, so once you complete the edging for the neckline, it's time to start the edging for the armhole. So you're going to find a spot near the side seam and attach your yarn. Or if you prefer, you can find a spot near the shoulder seam. But you're going to attach the yarn and you're going to single crochet evenly all the way around the armhole. And you're going to work a slip stitch into the very first stitch. Make sure you complete this step for both armholes, fasten off, weave in all of your ends, and we are done. Did you just do that? You did. You did, and I can't wait to see it. Make sure to share it with me on all my social media. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss what I have coming next. Thank you so much for crocheting with me. Until next time.